Hi, I'm Pauline Kaldas, and I teach literature and creative writing at Hollins University. And when Cairo first told me that there was going to be an exhibit and it was called Downsizing a couple of months ago, something about that just really caught my imagination. And I just kind of wondered what would happen if I tried to take that concept to see where it would lead me. So this was written specifically in response to the concept that inspired this exhibit, but I did take a slight detour, so the piece is called Upsizing. My parents were renovating their house again. My mother explains that the paint on the outside of the house is peeling and the wood has to be replaced. She's right. During our visits over the past several years, we've noticed the deterioration of the exterior. But it has taken my mother a while to decide what she wants to do. My father has been waiting patiently. After all these years, he knows not to force her into making a decision or influence her. Otherwise, he will bear the brunt of her disappointment. This is inevitable. As inevitable as the fact that my mother will not settle for simply fixing the outside. Her goal is to transform the house from a contemporary built in the 1970s, an architectural style that no longer pleases her despite her original infatuation with it, to a modern traditional home. As the plans fall into place with her decision to replace the exterior with cedar wood and add several gables, she decides that since the front of the house is being changed, she will also widen the foyer. The small space where people gather as they enter and leave gets crowded with guests, especially given the length of Egyptian goodbyes. The end of each visit is marked by kisses on both cheeks, questions about the well-being of each member of the family, and plans for the next time we will get together, not to mention thanks for the meal that was eaten and an exchange of recipes. This process is lengthy. My husband, who comes from a solid American family that says goodbye with a quick hug and a thank you for the visit, has now learned that when someone in my family announces that it's time to go, he can anticipate an additional hour or two before the actual departure takes place. To accommodate this ritual, the foyer will become expansive, allowing for an even longer ceremony of greetings and goodbyes. This, of course, will require a new front door and a custom-made window above the door. The new foyer will also contain additional storage space because my father has never discarded a single letter, bank statement, receipt, or any piece of paper, all of which are tightly packed in boxes with no labels to identify them. These boxes have been piled in step pyramid fashion in the closet of the upstairs study. This arrangement could have been acceptable, except for the fact that my mother resents the intrusion of these boxes because it allows less space for her clothing. Apparently, there is little consolation in having 4 other closets that serve as the recipients of her wardrobe. It's the principle of the thing, she explains, asserting that my father should not be saving these unnecessary papers and that they are the cause of the clutter in their home. Thus, 2 closets will be added to the design of the foyer. These are placed at a higher level, requiring a full-length ladder to reach them, and this is where my father's collection of boxes will reside. Since the foyer will be expanded, my parents will now replace the half bath on the main level with a full bath. This, my mother claims, is completely my father's fault. Ever since his brother had to be in a wheelchair, my father has asserted the need for a full bath on the main floor in fear that either of them might end up in the same position. On a rare night when I happen to call and my mother is out, my father assures me that there is no actual need for a full bath. You can simply secure a shower head in the ceiling and make that work in extenuating circumstances. However, my mother is adamant that a full bath has to be added to appease my father. This bathroom will include an original tile design with a wave of blue glass across the wall, as well as an Italian vanity and a custom-fitted shower system. There is no doubt that it will be worthy of a fold-out section in Architectural Digest. With this new addition, the washer and dryer will now be moved from the kitchen to the bathroom, providing additional storage space for the pots and pans, the serving platters, and the Showtime rotisserie bought through the TV infomercial. Naturally, this will lead to the space of the old bathroom being added to the family room, which also needs to have the floor-to-ceiling glass window replaced since it has been leaking. And if they're going to replace the window, Then they're going to extend the family room, which, my mother explains, has always been too small when she invites people over. So now there will be enough space for the multitude of guests, allowing them to fill the room comfortably and spill over into the octagonal sunroom that came with the last renovation. When I mention the more formal living room and dining room that are rarely used, she continues describing how the window in the family room will now become a door, which will require the addition of a deck, since you can't have a door that goes out to nothing. And that means they might as well expand the rest of the deck and have it wrap around the back of the house to overlook the backyard that will fall into shambles as a result of the construction. But new landscaping will come later. And in that case, one of the windows in the living room that I have already mentioned is never used will also be turned into a door that can go out onto the deck. I decide it's time to end our phone conversation when all of this begins to make sense. My parents were both in their 70s. According to our understanding of the stages of life, they should be downsizing. Clearly, they seem to have overlooked this. Their desire for expansion and the constant renewing of their home appears essential to the core of their being. Perhaps my parents' downsizing stage has already taken place. When we emigrated from Egypt in 1969, the three of us arrived with the 6 suitcases that were permitted on international flights, their contents carefully selected from our 3-bedroom villa apartment. Our home had been meticulously furnished when my parents married, each room's decor carefully negotiated between my mother and grandmother. The ornate dark mahogany bedroom set my grandmother chose, the grand contemporary oval dining room table my mother craved, the tapestried furniture for the formal salon, its green silky texture and enticement into the world of British royalty. Every item was sold for less than its value, including my grandmother's piano with her name engraved on it, her claim as the original owner permanently marked in its wooden frame. From what remained, my parents packed those 6 suitcases. They had to decide what to take and what to release permanently. My father was 36, and my mother was 30. An entire lifetime already lived. They distilled the accumulations of their life into 6 suitcases, carried across continents and oceans to sustain them in the new world they were about to enter. Little of their contents remain now, except a few years ago, my mother opened one of her 5 closets and offered me my grandmother's dress. It's a long, silky red dress, the silhouette design patterned with circles of gold. Sewn by my grandmother, her stitches were still tight and intimate, holding 2 roses at the neckline with pearls tucked in their center. The dress exemplifies another place and time. It was worn by a different woman than the grandmother I remember, her sadness heavy in her body after my grandfather's unexpected heart attack. What made my grandmother relinquish this single dress, agree to have it travel across time, and with so little space, what made my mother ask if she could have it, knowing there would likely be no place in the new world to wear such a dress? Also, not long ago, I was filling out an application that required the date I was granted citizenship, and I had to ask my father for the information. I watched him dig through his boxes, searching for that one letter that marked my permanent acceptance into this new country. He pulled out tubes, explaining that these were drawings of the projects he had done as a young architect in Egypt. By the time we immigrated, he had already acquired a solid reputation in his field. The last time we were in Egypt, as we drove through the streets of Cairo, my uncle pointed out the buildings my father had helped to design, his signature still left on the city skyline. These tubes must have claimed a precious place in those suitcases. There is another item that also found a place on our journey. It is tucked somewhere deep in the storage of my parents' home. A box of photos from our first life. Pictures of my parents' wedding, their heads crowned and bent toward the priest blessing them. A picture of me holding a pail and shovel at the edge of the Mediterranean. The 3 of us sitting in front of the piano the night before we left. These photos tumble, with no albums to hold them, memories that still float unexpectedly into our new lives. The rest of the luggage must have been filled with carefully selected articles of clothing and shoes, items now long gone, inadequate for the new terrain of America. Perhaps this kind of downsizing can only be done once. The rest of my parents' lives have been spent retrieving and replacing what could not fit in those suitcases. and their home, with its constant renovations and transformation, is a new life expanded and recreated to contain everything they now carry. Thank you.